Gary here. Welcome to episode 89 of BookMob. Hey, today I'm just going to be talking about a small section from Stephen Ambrose's D-Day, June 6, 1944. Now, what I've picked is because Stephen Ambrose was a consultant on the 1998 film, I think. Where did I get the exact date? Saving Private Ryan, 1998 film. This book was written in 1995, Ambrose's History of the D-Day, which covers a massive amount of anecdotal stories and history. It's one of the, it's probably, for me, it's a seminal text on D-Day because it goes right from the beginning, before D-Day, the planning, preparation. It's speaking to soldiers and cooks and storemen and sailors and airmen. So it is like a huge history boiled down through anecdotes and historical accounts. So it's a brilliant book. Now, I am going to pick the chapter from Ambrose's book, and it's chapter 21, and it's Will You Tell Me How We Did This? The 2nd Ranger Battalion on D-Day morning. Now, the film Saving Private Ryan is based on Charlie Company from the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and it wasn't an exact historical account, the film. However, I wanted to talk about the real Charlie Company that was portrayed in the film, and with Tom Hanks and a lot of other people. And in the film, I think they changed the actual. I've got a map here. The actual place where in the film they chose to put Charlie C. Company C of the 2nd Ranger Battalion was on Dog Green on Omaha Beach. Now, in fact, in the actual D-Day landings, the 2nd Ranger Battalion landed, and they were supposed to mount an attack at the Vir-à-Ville-sur-Mer. It was a pathway up through the cliffs, and their job was to go to the top and dominate the high ground. Now, obviously, when they, the whole point of the film was to show the terror and the madness and the chaos and the bravery and the so-called glory of that day. So they did a pretty good job. But so what I'm going to do here today is to read you some of the anecdotes of the actual Rangers who took part in that battle on that morning. Now, just so you know, in a Ranger company, you have 68 Rangers, which is different from the amount of soldiers in a regular company, a regular fighting army company or marine company. So Charlie Company, the one that Tom Hanks portrayed as the captain in that one, basically came ashore at 6:45 a.m. in 2 LCTs, landing crafts, and basically what you see in the film was somewhat, I wouldn't say it was idealized, because that first 20 minutes or so of the film is pretty intense. The second half of the film, with the mission to find the soldier who was, his brothers had killed and he was supposed to be taken out of the line. That didn't happen, obviously, in real life. That was part of the Hollywood version of it. So basically, I'm going to be talking about how it's from screen to sand. Basically, Saving Private Ryan's Charlie Company, and I'm just going to fill in some bits from actual Rangers who went ashore and had to storm the Vir-à-Ville-sur-Mer on almost the western end of Omaha Beach. So again, in the film, the troops, the Rangers that went ashore with Tom Hanks in the film, they came ashore at Dog Beach on Omaha Beach, and in the real world, the troops were landed because they had to go up the cliffs. Okay, so I'm just going to read some of these anecdotes of what was happening on 6th of June at 6:45 a.m. 1944 on the D-Day landings. So let's find a good place to start. C Company was alone when it landed and virtually alone throughout the day. Like I said, they came in at 06:45 a.m. and they had to go up the Viraville draw, which was like I think it was like a pathway up through the cliffs. So the plan for Company C to land on the far right flank of Omaha Beach and follow Company A of the 116th Regiment up the Viraville draw, pass through the village, turn right, and clear the high ground. Now, what happened was the Company A of the 116th Regiment kind of got, basically wiped out as they hit the beach. And then Company C of the Rangers came in a few minutes later, and they were basically on the far western edge of Omaha Beach, just beyond the Viraville draw. The closest American troops were more than 2 kilometers to the east at Dog Red. So again, shows you the actual geography of the beach is probably a lot less obvious in the movie. On the LCT, as they were going through the waves, Sergeant Donald Scriber recalled the men in his boat singing "Happy Anniversary" to Sergeant Walter Gelden on the June of 6, 1944, because it was Gelden's 3rd wedding anniversary. And basically, here's and here's Scriber's memory of Sergeant Walter Gelden. I remember dropping 3 different times as I ran across the beach. Each time I did, machine gun burst in front of my face in the sand. I didn't stop because I knew what was coming. I dropped because I was so tired. Then when Scriber made it to the base of the cliff, he says, "I looked back and I saw Walter Gelden lying out on the beach with his hand raised up asking for help. Walter never made it. He died on his 3rd wedding anniversary." Then we have Lieutenant Gerald Henry. He said, "There was no one on the beach in front of us, and we were going to touch down in a sector that had not been invaded by other American soldiers. So when Lieutenant Heaney's LCA hit the sandbar, the British coxswain called out in a cheery, 'This is as far as I go, Yanks,' and lowered the ramp. German machine gun fire ripped across the boat. The first man out was immediately hit. Heaney saw he had no chance if he went down the ramp, so he jumped over the side." And I think I show that quite a few times in the film. "All around me, men were being killed and wounded. I ran as hard as I could towards the shore. I remember being so exhausted when I reached the shore that it was all that I could do to make it to the cliff." Okay, this company, the CEO of company, Captain Ralph Goranson, recalled going across the beach was just like a dream, with all the movement of the body and the mind just in automatic motion. So when they got there, the cliff was sheer, about 30 meters high, just to the west of the Viraville draw. At its base, men were out of sight of German machine gunners, but they were still vulnerable to mortar fire and to grenades being dropped over the top by the Germans. Back to Sergeant Scribner. Sergeant Scribner's boat was hit 3 times by artillery fire. The first shell tore the ramp completely off the boat, killing the men in front and covering the others with blood. The second hit the port side. Scribner started to climb over the rear starboard side when he noticed a 60mm mortar lying in the bottom of the craft. He stopped to pick it up when the 3rd shell tore out the starboard side. Somehow he made it into the water. I was carrying a radio, my rifle, my grenades, my extra ammunition, my bedroll, all my gear, and I started sinking in the channel. I didn't think I was ever going to stop going down. And Scribner did make it to the shore, did make it to the beach or to the cliff face. Solomon, leading 2nd platoon of C Company, was first off his boat. He went to the right into chest-deep water as automatic weapons and rifle fire sprayed the debarking Rangers. The second man off, Sergeant Oliver Reed, was hit. Solomon reached over and pulled him from under the ramp just as the craft surged towards on a wave. He told Reed to make it the best he could and started wading towards the shore. And then he goes on to say, "By this time the Germans had zeroed in on the ramp. Ranger after Ranger was hit by small arms fire as they jumped into the water. And in addition, mortar shells landed around the craft, making geysers of water. Solomon made it to the base of the cliff. He looked back. Bodies lay still where they had fallen, trickles of blood reddening the sand. Some of the wounded were crawling as best they could, some with a look of despair and bewilderment on their tortured and pain-racked faces. Others tried to get back onto their feet only to be hit again by enemy fire. Bodies rolled back and forth at the water's edge. So, of the 68 Rangers in those 2 LCTs in Company C, 19 were killed as they got off the LCTs. 18 were wounded. Only 31 men made it to the base of the cliff, and yet the company had to fire a single shot. So it was basically showing how intense the fire was and how difficult the job it was trying to survive that initial 10 or 20 minutes. Sergeant Scribner recalled Sergeant Duke Golas. He had about half his head blown away by a grenade, and he was still standing at the bottom of the cliff firing his weapon, hollering at the krauts up above to come out and fight. So by 7:30, so they went ashore at 6:45, so by 7:30, Company C of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, or what was left of it, was on the crest. They were probably the first assault unit to reach the high ground. C Company's mission was to move west along the high ground, but Captain Goranson decided to first of all to attack a house and clean out the trenches behind it. Lieutenant Moody led a patrol against the house. He kicked in the door and killed the officer in charge, then began a search through the trenches. Then Moody was killed by a bullet through his forehead, and Lieutenant Solomon took command of the patrol. And here's a couple of other stories. Sergeant George Morrow and Julius Belcher spotted a machine gun that was enfilading the western end of Omaha Beach, one of those guns that had killed so many Rangers 1 hour earlier. It was firing continuously down the beach again as the follow-up waves attempted to get across the sand. In a pitiless rage, Belcher ran towards the position, oblivious of his own safety. He kicked in the door and threw in a white phosphorus grenade. As the phosphorus began to burn on their skins, the Germans abandoned their gun and ran out the door, screaming in agony. Belcher shot them down as they emerged. So basically, C Company had not completed its mission. Indeed, it could be said that they never even got started on this mission, as in getting a full unit, a full Ranger company off the beach into the cliffs. Its action was minor in scale, a small unit engagement of inconsequential size when measured by the number of men involved, yet it was critical. By occupying the Germans on the west side of Vierville Draw and on the cliff, the Rangers diverted some of the machine gun fire that otherwise would have added to the ongoing carnage on the beach. So what I was just trying to say, if you watch the film, just try and remember some of these anecdotes of the actual men who ran off landing crafts into a hail of fire. And again, out of the 68 men, 19 were killed, and then another 2 were killed the same day later on in the action. So that was 21 men killed and 30 wounded in one day. And if you think out of all those men who had trained for years, they'd trained for 2 years for this, and in literally half an hour, most of them were dead or badly wounded. So it is an incredible book. Stephen Ambrose, D-Day, June 6, 1944, the climactic battle of World War II. It's a brilliant read, really worth the effort. And I just gave you just a smidgen of the accounts because I just wanted to draw attention to the film Saving Private Ryan, with the first 20 minutes of that film, with the actual history of the men that the film drew on in order to create that memorable scene in Saving Private Ryan, the movie. Okay. Ambrose did serve as a historical consultant and as well on the Band of Brothers series. They did talk to Ranger veterans who were there on the day to get their insights. And I suppose, in a way, it was a way of Steven Spielberg, who was trying to create a film that was different from the majority of Hollywood war films, even though the second half of the film is almost pure Hollywood, in the sense of its heroic stature in saving the single man, Saving Private Ryan. I mean, and of course, the fighting in and above the beaches of Normandy was fierce and horrible, and thousands of men were killed and wounded during that time. So that was just an idea that you can read history, anecdotal history, and as well as in-depth historical academic history and combine it into a brilliant narrative that I highly recommend. I think there is obviously an audio book of this, and maybe if you're not a reader, I might say try listening to the audiobook. I'm not sure who does the voice. Someone said it was Tom Hanks, but it isn't. I checked it up; it wasn't Tom Hanks. I think I made a note of who the actual Ambrose, Saving Private Ryan, fictional. No, I didn't. I made a note, but I never put it down in this paper. Anyway, that's it for this week. Quick one. I just wanted you to enjoy some historical narrative, and hopefully you guys did all right over Christmas, the New Year, and I'll be back with another episode soon. Thanks for joining. Remember, keep reading, buy some books, and get out there and read. Bye.